Hey guys, I'm going to show some recent additions, maybe some not so recent additions, just some things laying around. It's mostly rock and roll, but it should be something for everybody in this batch. I'm going to start off. I just got this the other day. This beautiful record, the New York Dolls, A Hard Night's Day, and this is all their, not all. This is their demos from 1973, recorded at the Record Plant, I believe, in New York City, and I really love this because I never was a fan of the Todd Rundgren's production of their first LP. And it's got all the first LP tracks and a whole bunch of others. It's got like a 7-Day Weekend, Gary U.S. Bonds cover, but it's raw, but not lo-fi or anything. It's killer record. Beautiful package. Nice gatefold double album. It's got like 21 songs, and it's on pink vinyl, and this was put out by Norton Records. I'm not a big fan of color vinyl, but this works on this record. And this came out 2018, so it came out 4 years ago, but I did buy it was out on CD like 20 years ago, so I had the CD, but I'm very happy to have it on vinyl because it's a wonderful rock and roll record. It was on sale when I bought it, so I'm very happy with that. Another record's been on my list for a long time and finally grabbed it also from Norton Records is Dion, Kickin' Child, the Lost album from 1965. And this is Dion when he's very influenced by Bob Dylan. It's actually produced by Tom Wilson, who did a bunch of Dylan classic records, Bringing It All Back Home, maybe Another Side of Bob Dylan, and Times They Are A-Changin', I think. But Dion was a huge star in the 60s and especially in New York City, and he had free reign of the studio, and Columbia Records let him do whatever he wanted. The problem was Dion was cutting all this new, like, cutting-edge music, and the record company didn't want to release any of it. They just shelved it and wanted him to keep putting out his pop rock and roll hits, like from the crooner from the Bronx. But he was hanging out in the Village, hanging out with Dylan, and obviously with Tom Wilson. And he's cut stuff that sounds like Bringing It All Back Home. And if you want a sample song, the title track, Kickin' Child, total Dylan sound. And he's doing that electric Dylan sound, like the same within months of when Dylan was doing it. And he's got a few songs that sound just like almost Dylan sound-alikes. He actually covers, they don't sound like sound-alikes, but It's All Over Now, Baby Blue, and he does Dylan's Farewell. But it sounds a little bit like the 60s Everly Brothers without the two vocals, or maybe like what Buddy Holly might have been doing had he lived. It's a real great timepiece of the mid-60s, and a wonderful little story. And there's Dion in the 60s, and most of this stuff was never released, and they put it out as the Lost album. So this is a big deal. If you're a Dylan fan, definitely check this out, or if you're a Dion fan, check it out, Norton Records. Vance Zep Pearl sent me a bunch of records, and I might have showed him on live streams, but I just want to thank him again. And he sent me this Van Halen bootleg live in Pasadena, 1977. It's a radio broadcast, and it's all the stuff from the first album. A lot of fun, good sounding record. I love it, and cool. He also sent me Iron Maiden Summerfest 1981, and this would be, I think, Milwaukee, and it's the Paul Di'Anno era, and they're doing the first two albums, Killers and the self-titled, and it's really good. I'd say it's 8 out of 10 sound quality. It's a radio broadcast, exciting record, double album, and I think it's got an inner, like pictures and whatever, a little blurb. And he sent me a few things, but these are the ones I'm going to show you. He sent me the Brown Acid, a sampler of I think it's one song off each volume of the first 10 volumes of the Brown Acid series, Riding Easy label, and it's all like 70s obscurities, hard and heavy stuff. Thank you, Vance. My wife picked this record up. This is the Hollywood Stars, a mid-70s band from LA, Sunset Strip. An interesting band. Their claim to fame is they cut the single King of the Nighttime World that Kiss later on covered. And that's a great tune, and I think the other song might be Kids on the Street, but cut a really good single in like 74-ish, and this is their album from 77, and it's not great. She got this cheap but they are now behind the times in 77. Van Halen's out and things moved on. They're kind of like a Legs Diamond Jr., but they're just not that heavy. The first 2 tracks are killer. All the Kids on the Street, Weekend Love's good, and then there's another good one on side 1, and then side 2, it starts getting soft rock, and they're really out of time, out of step, and it's not a great record, but it was cheap. And the other interesting thing about this band is there's 2 drummers, which is really unheard of for like straight up West Coast rock and roll, but interesting. I don't know. She also got the Softies, a Dutch band, but they're actually English. It was an English guy, I think, and he moved over to Holland and started up the Softies. But he was in the Softies originally, I believe, if I'm telling the story right, with Captain Sensible and Rat Scabies before the Damned started. And this is like a pub rock record, punk rock. Their first single is killer. This record is just okay, but it was cheap. And it was on Charlie Records, and this is probably 77, 78. And there's lovely Charlie Records. And Charlie usually is a reissue label. Yeah, 78, but they did put out new bands in the 70s. But the Softies were known as also the backup band on Captain Sensible's Jet Boy, Jet Girl. That's the Softies, if you could read that, was backing up Captain Sensible. So that's pretty much how they're known, and they're one single. This record's interesting. It starts off, it's like it's got some punk tunes. It's a bit scattered, like a punk rock, and then like a pub rock. There's a track on here, a really good track, sounds just like Eddie and the Hot Rods in their prime. And then it gets to like soft rock and a little weird. It almost sounds like kind of like an amateurish version of like the Who's Quadrophenia in a way. It's hard to explain, but it's not a great record, but it's not an expensive record. Worth it for a couple of tracks, but the Softies. And I got this one I didn't listen to. I know a lot of these songs, but Volume 3 of Mad Mike's Monsters. He was a famous DJ, played a lot of crazy rock and roll songs in the 50s and 60s, and these are some of his choice cuts. So I got this also off of Norton. And now I got a box set, which sets the standard for all box sets. Because you get box sets and people get them on, you get things reissued in box sets on splattered vinyl. Is the mastering good? Is it analog? Is it digital? Well, this box set is by Charlie Feathers. And the reason why it's so good is it's all original singles, all dead stock original singles. And this is from his Feathers label. And it's from all his singles he cut from 1978 to I think the early 80s, 83, let's say. So it's number 1 through number 13, the whole run of the single, the whole run of the label. And it's all dead stock, mint singles. So it's the original mastering, the original master tapes, all analog, everything, la-di-da, perfect. And it was all compiled in one. And Charlie Feathers is regarded as the king of rockabilly. And he was there at day one. He worked. He hung out at Sun Records. He might have worked there. Who knows? But he was there when Elvis recorded. He wrote the song. I forgot to remember to forget you. I think that was Charlie Feathers' song that Elvis recorded. Right? I'm pretty sure. But Charlie, interesting cat. Like he's got probably one of the best voices of the 20th century to me. He's one of these guys that sing, and it just like it comes from the soul of man. And I put his voice as. It's just unearthly. It's put him in with like Billie Holiday, Hank Williams, Blind Willie Johnson. His voice is almost bigger than the genre, like than the style of rockabilly. He could have been a jazz singer, a country singer, a bluegrass singer. He could have read nursery rhymes, and that voice just would have been heavenly. And anyway, this isn't his best stuff, but it's kind of country, some rockabilly, and a couple oddball numbers. But he's an interesting guy is that he kept cutting rockabilly. He was in his own little world, and he kept cutting rockabilly on indie labels, jumping around, always had this echo, and he's always doing his own thing. Regardless what happened in time, he was in his bubble. Through the 60s, cutting rockabilly, country rockabilly, 70s, he got big, like rediscovered in England in the 70s, had a comeback, but he still kept cutting all these great songs. He was almost in his world, and he became kind of like an outsider artist. He was like closed off from the outside world and just kept doing his thing, almost like Bo Diddley, where Bo Diddley was like a cutting edge. He was on top of his game 55, 57, but then he just stayed in his Bo Diddley world regardless prog rock, punk rock, arena rock, whatever's happening, he was still Bo Diddley. And Charlie Feathers the same way. One of my favorite characters of rock and roll. And when I was a young man, I went to Memphis. One of those things, I wanted to meet Charlie Feathers. I was a kid, and we went to his house, and it was dark out, and the lights were on the house, and I chickened out. I was in my early 20s, and I didn't know Charlie. I want to knock on the door and have some like raving alcoholic shoot me or something. Like, there was no internet. I didn't know anything. We looked him up in the phone book, and we got to Charlie Feathers' house, and we didn't meet him. A big regret, because he died only a couple years later. So one of my heroes, Charlie Feathers. And we got a bunch of singles. I'm not going to show them all. I'll probably play some of these on my live streams, but I'll show you. This might be the best of the batch. This is a bootleg, but it's a bootleg of a very rare single from Australia. It's got a hideous cover of like a fetus. And this is, I think, 78. I don't know what year this is, but this is probably the top 10 or in the top 5 even best Australian punk rock singles. And this is the Babies, Babeez. They put out a 3-song single. It's absolutely killer. Dewana Love, Hate, and Nobody Wants Me. Nobody Wants Me is the ballad. But the originals of this cost thousands if you could even find one. And this one cost me a little bit of money. But it came out in this bag, and it's an exact repo, almost like they had extra bags. If you could see, there's like a texture on the bag, and it came with the tape folded over, and this is how the original came out. And I'm psyched to get it because the music is great, the historical importance, it's just an awesome single. So I am psyched, and this bootleg will probably be hard to find after a while. I'm not going to go through all these, but here's some Pretty Things EPs I got off Norton Records. Great rhythm and blues, like, and then it became like just 60s like beat band, like freak beat a little bit. Not quite freak beat, but I guess R&B, rock and roll, mid 60s. But 2 EPs, and I have a couple others. But my wife picked up some punk singles. The Sham 69 doing "Mister, You're a Better Man Than I," and which is the Yardbirds song, and they do it exactly like the Yardbirds. So it's almost no sense to them. It doesn't make a lot of sense to do that in 79 at their height, to do a straight cover. But the B-side, "Give a Dog a Bone," is fantastic. And it's Jimmy Percy. And this is Sham 69 Oi Band. And this is them in 79, still at the top of their game. She's got a great cheap one, a Bauhaus single, Le Cajera Nick, if I pronounce that right. Crack That Whip. And this is on Beggar's Banquet. Great Bauhaus track. And then I had this one for a few months. Maybe I showed it, maybe I didn't. I apologize. But Junior Parker, he was from Memphis and recorded for Sun Records. And this is a 4-song EP from Charlie Records in the 70s, released in, I imagine, the late 70s, early 80s. But it's his 4 songs he cut for Sun. Interesting, because this is 1953, I believe, these recordings. It's the closest thing to rockabilly. The music sounds exactly like rockabilly. It's got blues, a little like guitar based, not so much like bluegrass like Elvis had, but if it wasn't for Junior Parker, the singer, he was kind of like a straight guy, a black guy, and he wore a suit, and he was more of a Nat King Cole guy. But if he was a wild front man, this would definitely be like pretty much the first rockabilly single. I mean, there's always some odd hillbilly with a beat stuff. There may be stuff before, but if it wasn't for that, then this would be the first thing before Elvis's first single. But darn close to rockabilly, and he cut the original Mystery Train that Elvis covered. But awesome record to have that on an EP. And this EP is also fairly new. This is from El Toro. It's a record label out of Spain, and they do a whole series they have of EPs of really good blues artists and R&B singers, and they do 4 songs on the EP. And this is Billy Boy Arnold from Chicago. He was a harmonica player, a little kid, like a teenager, played in the street, hooked up with Bo Diddley on the early recordings. He lived next door to Sonny Boy Williamson. That's how he learned how to play. But this is his 4 best songs, and I'm very happy to have it on 7-inch 45. And I Wish You Would, his most famous song, is probably my favorite blues song from the 1950s. And this is, like, it's got Rockinitis and I Ain't Got You, which is the standard. It's a cover. He didn't write it. I forget who did the original Ain't Got You, but his is the classic version, the one the Yardbirds covered and everyone knows. But I'm psyched. I had this on LP, but they get it on 7-inch. Pretty happy. Another one my wife got, the UK Subs, another classic single, Party in Paris from 1980. Classic lineup, you know, British punk band, obviously, with Alvin Gibbs, Nicky Garrett, and Charlie Harper. And I don't know if I remember the B-side, Fall of the Empire, but cool. She also got another Bishops, one of our favorite bands, for the Count Bishops of the Bishops, Take What I Want, and this is on the Chiswick label, probably 1978. No Lies on the B-side. A great kick-ass pub rock. Another song, one of my favorite rock and roll songs. I did not have it on single, only on compilation records, but a repro of The Phantom, Love Me. I'd have to check all the times, but I'd say for under 2-minute songs, this is probably the second best rock and roll song by a white artist that's under 2 minutes. Wild rockabilly. The Phantom was Alan Lott was his real name, and he was actually signed to Dot Records. Pat Boone got him signed to Dot Records. So anyone who badmouths Pat Boone, he helped put out one of the greatest rock and roll songs of the rock and roll genre. The Phantom, love it. Maybe I'll show one more. This is a boot or repro of a killer rockabilly track on this interesting small white rock label, and it's Big Al Downing, it's Al Downing and the Pocats, but it was Big Al Downing, and it's a black cat who played piano, but he cut killer rockabilly song called Down on the Farm. As good as it gets. The B-side, My Oh Babe, is another good song, a little more R&B, but Down on the Farm, killer rockabilly. Happy to have this on 45 so I could spin it. But it's not obscure. That's a pretty well-known track. And then a bunch of other cool singles, but I'll probably play them on a live stream instead of boring everyone. And this I had for a long time. This is a box set. It's called Scorcher. And it's Skins, Suedes, and Style from the Streets, 1967 and 1973. And I don't think I showed this box, but it's all skinhead reggae or boss reggae, we call it now, or they call it now. And it's a lot of well-known tracks. It's got Skidhead Girl by Cimarip, which actually I think was a British band, but it's all Jamaican artists. Cornell Campbell doing Girl in My Dreams. Itmic by Desmond Decker. You'll know, Guns and Navarrone's on here. But it's a great box set of singles. And they do the labels. And this came out, I mean, I had this for a while, but it's got a little book in there, a little booklet. But all the labels are done right. They do each label, and they do the Trojan sleeves. There's a Trojan. And they put 2 A-sides, so each single could be flipped. And they do, each label looks how it does. This is Duke Reed. But it's a wonderful box set. And the reason I brought that up is because I think on Christmas, or I don't know if it was my wife's birthday, I can't remember, but a friend of ours gave us the book. And it's the book that accompanies the box set, or maybe the box set accompanies the book, because it's a massive book. And I think these singles also came out on a CD comp. But wonderful book on the early skinhead scene from 67 to 73. And it's just got wonderful pictures. Let's see. Get some good skinhead stuff. It's just full of pictures and record labels and the original skinheads. There's some of the original skinheads. But it's a fantastic book, and I appreciate that. I know I haven't read it, just looked through it, but it's massive. And that's that, and I think that's it, right? It was about 20 minutes. That's good enough. And rest of these I'll play on a live stream. I got some really good, really good singles. See you later. Thanks for watching.